Hey, stop making complex villains. Sometimes a nomadic warrior, barbarian, who just wants to raid and pillage a village is just enough for an arc. I don't want to learn about the main lich and how it ties to everyone's tragic backstory and how it has connections and it goes back centuries. And there's a soft influence on learning about the political faction and how each PC's backstory. Okay, maybe... All right, maybe smart villains are really interesting. I get it. I'm trapping myself. I've done this numerous times. But, sometimes, having this... No, smart villains are really fun. So above table, it's fun to have an unhinged psycho. But smart villains are really, really interesting. Welcome, game masters, players, and TTRPG enthusiasts to Above Table, where we have forgotten that our homebrew item we gave you 3 sessions ago is now biting us in the ass, and we regret it. Today, I'm joined by fellow TTRPG content creator, Kayla from Potions and Potpourri. Welcome.
Yeah, that one's a mouthful. I know, a lot of P's in there. Not very good for the microphone unless you got the pop filter on there. Yeah. Hi, thanks for having me. I'm Kayla. I use she, her pronouns. I am from the Potions and Potpourri podcast. I actually have a co-host on that podcast who didn't join us this evening, but she is my gal pal, my dynamic duo, and her and I make all sorts of D&D and TTRPG related content. We mostly just have conversations about D&D and things that we have learned or experienced from the context of Keisha being a forever DM and me typically being her forever player. But we also have interviews with people kind of like this, and we sometimes do live plays, and we even do these little potion segments where we just kind of have improv topics and make things up on the fly together. You can also find me sometimes on people's live plays and TTRPG streams. And as far as where you can find us on the internet, most social medias, TikTok, although who knows how long that'll be around.
For real, yeah.
Yeah. Instagram, don't go to X, we're not going to be there anymore. And then I don't know about the other stuff. That's a little daunting with the blue sky and the threads and all of that. But we're around. Find us over your podcast.
Keep the name Potions and Potpourri in mind.
Exactly.
Give it a quick search. You'll find it, because I did, and we were able to find some of that. And thank you for really running with that intro. I love it.
I've done it before. Can you tell?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, in spirit, your co-host, always in spirit.
Yes.
And it's always a pleasure to talk to other storytellers and content creators who sort of revolve around improv and roleplay. So before I actually get into our icebreaker question, smart villain, simple villain, what do you prefer?
I like them both. I don't think it's a hot take at all, actually. Especially Keisha is known to make some really interesting villains, and some of them have just been really basic, kind of like what you said in the beginning. You don't need to have a tragic backstory. You don't need to have this person be an absolute psychopath. Sometimes they can just be evil, and that's enough.
I love evil villains just for the sake of evil.
Yeah.
Doesn't need to be complex.
As long as you have a compelling story of why they're the bad guy, it doesn't have to be a backstory that's tragic, just a reason that they are the way that they are. That's enough.
I had a villain who was this beautiful, almost midnight skin tiefling with golden horns and just had one cracked horn, and that's why he was evil. Because he was I was beautiful, and now you made me not, and now I want to kill everyone. I was that's all you need.
And as long as the story is being built properly, it doesn't really matter how tragic the villain actually is. Anybody can be scary.
Oh man, yeah. Put that on a shirt. Anyone can be scary. Well, I definitely want to sort of dive into your mind, so I want to give you my first icebreaker question.
Yeah, please.
When it comes to ability scores versus class and species, what do you choose first when it comes to character creation?
That's a good question. Boy, it depends. Let me back up a step.
Okay.
I mostly choose species and class first. And then I like to roll my stats. I'm not I want to be a wisdom build or I want to be a charisma build. I'm usually just trying to think of who the character is and then go from there. I'm I'm gonna be honest, I'm really bad about building characters. It's like a really stressful part of TTRPGs for me.
Oh.
It's like
once you get them on the ground and running, you feel good.
Yeah. Like once I have a concept and I can start putting the pieces together, it's like more fun and I can get more involved in it. But like those first initial thoughts, I'm like, God, this is like too many choices. Like, how do I pick anything out of this? But yeah, I definitely do ability scores closer to like the end of the rest of my builds, and I roll stats to see kind of what comes up and then attribute stats that way.
I've been tripped up because I'm very much in the same mindset of I like to have a little bit of a backstory, and then I go, okay, well, I think half orc would fit well with this, and then maybe a rogue would fit well with that, and definitely sort of like the presenting portion of your character is usually what I go for. But I've been tripped up where you make rolls and all of a sudden you are either really bad at a lot of stats or really good. The worst part of it being really good at a lot of stats. I hate that.
Yeah. Because it's like, well, shit. Well, now what's gonna be my best stat, you know? And then you have to kind of decide, well, okay, if I want to be a rogue, then my dexterity should probably be the highest. But then you only get like a 13, and you're like, well, fuck. Like, now what am I gonna do? And then you have to kind of like maybe tweak your character a little bit, or like have a flavor reason why they're not so good at some of these skills that they should naturally be good at.
I remember there was an experience I had where I was getting like 13s, 14s, 15s across the board, and of course you can then start to assign numbers. And I was like, I don't like that. Now my wizard has like a 14 in strength. That doesn't feel good. That doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's not because I started with presenting, and I was like, I'm gonna play kind of like a bit of a sickly character who has maybe had sick for a lot of their time, which is why they read a lot. And now I got a 14 strength. But no, I feel that I love having the presenting first and then the stats afterwards. If I ever I always default to point by.
Yeah, I actually I don't mind point by overall. I've had it be suggested for using when building characters for like one shots and stuff. But when I'm making a more longer term character, I'm all about rolling, and it's always 4d6, drop the lowest. I know that might be a hot take, but I'll die on that hill.
Oh my god, there's so many variants on how to get your beginning stats.
And bless the DMs that let you reroll ones on those. That's clutch. I love that.
I'm gonna fight you on this one. I don't like rolling for stats. I don't.
Okay.
I don't. It is a weird experience.
It's a little chaotic.
It is.
It can be a little chaotic. Yeah. But also point by, I feel like can be a little limiting because having an 8 in a stat is fun. Don't get me wrong. But to me, it's more fun when you roll it and that's what you get, and then you're stuck with it. Whereas you have to choose to put an 8 in something, and that may not necessarily vibe with your character.
That's true. Plus, we have a bunch of math rocks. Let us use it.
Yeah, exactly. I just like to roll the rocks, so that's more what it is.
Well, I want to dive in a little deeper in terms of the content, as well as the TTRPG experiences you've had, as well as to share it with the audience. And so this may be a shocker. So careful, don't gasp too hard. But I am masculine presenting.
Whoa.
He, him, and I know. It's amazing. And something that I personally appreciate viewing from this side of the screen is really the incredible importance that, and I've seen this from some of your videos as well as some of your interviews, is really the importance you have on feminine representation and involvement in the TTRPG space. And I recognize my perspective overall is kind of narrowed by my friends and family that I have my little bubbles in. But in your opinion, because I think you definitely have that viewpoint that I don't, is the TTRPG space still a Wild West for feminine presenting, or has it calmed down, in the years as it's been played?
That's an interesting question. I actually had this conversation on another interview show. A good friend of ours, Sam, Classic Sam, NYGM, does interviews. And she likes to ask a similar question a lot to her guests. And so we had a similar conversation that I really enjoyed. But I think it's a complicated answer. I think, yes, it's gotten much better, obviously, since D&D, original D&D. Where sexism and racism are literally built into the game. We definitely don't have that nearly as much now. And just existing as a woman in a space that is historically male and white dominated, it's been interesting. It's been interesting to learn kind of how the history comes up and how some of it has just kind of ingrained itself into the way that we like have learned to play the game and like some of the lore and stuff. But overall, I've been super fortunate that I have had almost only good experiences playing TTRPGs. I'm like so fortunate to not have ever had that like horror story of like neckbeard DM telling me what I can and can't do because I'm a girl, you know, and like all the boys at my table are harassing me and like making me do stupid shit and I hate it. I'm so fortunate I never had to experience that, but it's a reality for a lot of people. And I think that is still pretty prevalent in the industry in general, but and not just with D&D, but there's been just so many great movements out there to kind of prevent it and to kind of say, hey, there's other content that you can engage with that doesn't have this, so why would you engage with that? Just look at something else. Go watch Brayed Iyengar DM on Dimension 20. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that there are I mean, obviously, I mean, in my personal view, I would love to see there's be more of like a higher shift, because when it comes to like, you know, as Brayed Iyengar is a great example of sort of these almost faces of TTRPG content creation. Obviously, you have like Matt Mercer and you have Brendan Lee Mulligan, and then you have like the McElroys and things like that. But when you start to think of like feminine presenting TTRPG players, you know, Brayed Iyengar goes right up the, you know, the top. Maybe like an Emily Axford, but that's where you start to like, and you start to grab as many names as you can. I'm kind of in that space of like, I would love to see that shift a little higher, you know?
Yeah.
We need a little bit more.
And I just feel like people, the more outside of the norm you are, the more likely you are to tell an engaging story, right? So like, the further you are removed from the majority, the more context you have for interesting storytelling. And not to say that a straight, white, male-presenting person isn't going to tell a good story, but what it boils down to is that a black woman probably has a lot more interesting things to say than a white guy does, frankly, especially in the TTRPG storytelling space.
Yeah. I think it's that, and combined with the idea that because of entertainment space has been dominated by sort of like a male-white experience, you know, those stories that have not been told or don't have like that large enough audience are still sitting in the background, and they just need to be pulled to the front.
Yeah.
I dabble a lot in like start playing, and so there was this one posted game that was just like, it was incredible, and it was very much heavily inspired by like Latin America folk tales.
So cool.
And I was like, oh my god, yes. That's amazing. And it's like, you know, the full on like Calacascol, you know, designs and, you know, Deus Dos Muertos and things like that. I'm like,
sick.
This is what we need. We need more of like this, you know, subversion to standard entertainment.
Yeah. And it just keeps it interesting, you know, like you're telling a similar story to what is being told in like the Dungeon Master's Guide, like an adventure in the Dungeon Master's Guide. But like your particular take on it is going to be so fresh and so different that it's already going to just be something that people are going to want to see and enjoy.
Hell yeah. And this is a weird take, and not weird take, but like an observation that I've had. And I know this is probably in sort of full disclosure to the audience. This is like the first time we've really sat down and talk, you know, chat a little bit on TikTok. So we're learning about each other as we're going on. But I've done this content for very long time, over 4 years on YouTube, and I've run so many one shots, whether it's private or public, you know, for public consumption. And I'll be honest, this is such a weird experience I've had. Even though D&D has this association that it's like a male-dominated space, 75% of the time, it is sort of feminine presenting people who are like, yeah, I would love to be in your one shot. Well, the males I've reached out to, nothing. And I'm like, what's
Totally.
Do we just want to I'm like, stop playing in basements? We could also make content.
I think what's really interesting, I've tripped some people up with this, is my top demographic is definitely middle-aged white men for watching my content. I don't know if it's like green-haired liberal girl talking about D&D is like totally different than what they're used to, so like they want to like engage with that more. I feel like people expect us to have more of like a female presenting audience or like the younger crowd being interested in it, but it is like majority middle-aged white men, which really cracks me up considering some of our content.
Hey, I mean, if they are consuming it and vibing with it and enjoying with it,
exactly,
that's a win. That's
exactly. Good. Hey, if I can help just change a little bit of perception and just kind of, you know, help people see some other sides of the TTRPG space, then I'm doing my job.
So if you're looking for truly inspirational and like very, you know, digging into the dredges of it, please go find Potions and Potpourri. So Kayla, we may be the same minds here, or there may be a little spat. There might be a fight. We're not sure. But I'm fine with looking at it as a bad guy because I will have that negative take on this. But I saw one of your most recent videos, and this was going to be recorded and posted later, so feel free to look for it. But you were talking about...
It's still up.
It's still up? Oh, that's a good point. But you're talking about backgrounds.
Oh my god.
And I think, and this is my hot take, I think both D&D backgrounds for both 2014 as well as 2022 are dumb. I don't think we need them.
No. I've been wanting to make that video forever, and it's actually a topic I've wanted to talk to Keisha about on our show forever, and it just kind of came up when I made a character recently, and it just kind of boiled over, but I've always hated the background system in D&D. It's like, when I started looking at like the handbook more when I was making that video, I was like, I really feel like they put it out there like saying that this is a pivotal part of your character creation and that you should use this to build a character. It's going to help you so much. And I've never found it useful. I've never once made a character and had a background that I've been like, perfect. This is going to help me so much with my character build. Thank you.
You know what my experience has been so far with the backgrounds and how it is involved in a game is, I got proficiency for this.
Yeah.
My background gave me proficiency. And, it gave me an extra language. I had one player who, in my current campaign, is playing like an archivist. I'm thinking of the other word.
Artificer?
No. A background style where they go into ruins. Indiana Jones. Why did my brain's not connecting?
Yeah. Archaeologist.
So they chose that kind of background, and I'm like, well, you guys are starting like in a city. That's not going to come up for a very long time.
Totally.
So what use is it?
Yeah, I had some people tell me that, like, when I made that video, that they were like, I find it really useful to just kind of like flesh out my backstory and stuff, which I think is the point of the tool. But in my experience, whenever I built a character, by that point, I've already got my backstory figured out, you know?
Yeah.
The only thing I've ever found the background system to be useful for is the ideals, bonds, and flaws. Because that has always been a good jumping off point for me to be like, okay, like, where would I put these on my character sheet? But otherwise, I've never once found a background that I thought was actually fitting, and they just feel so limiting. Like, they're so ultra specific sometimes, and they don't seem to actually like they're not open-ended enough, you know? Like, you can build your own and you can choose whatever you want or whatever.
At that point, what's the point?
What's the point? Yeah, exactly.
It should just be like, okay, you create your character and you get 2 free skills and a free language.
You can take 2 skill proficiencies of your choice, choose a tool, and choose a language of your choice, and that's your background. Here's a table if you want to roll some ideals, bonds, and flaws for chaos, neutral, and lawful.
Yeah.
Great.
That's it. We're golden. We're done.
And they all feel like, so many of the backgrounds feel military. Like, there's a soldier, there's a mercenary, there's a like gun for hire style one. I don't remember what that one's called, but they all just feel kind of the same, like militaristic style, or like a recluse. Yeah,
you're a hermit, or you're an urchin who works alone, or you're like
a folk hero. Like, why would I be a folk hero? That's now like weird. A level 3 adventurer traveling with people, like,
and people know me. It's like.
Yeah,
I haven't made a name at all. I haven't gone. A goblin scares me at this point.
But that's like the only background that fits a bard. So it's like, what do you do?
It's weird that you can't mesh and even that concept of like mixing and matching backgrounds, it still doesn't feel right. Like you could still be a haunted one and a sage, you know, but you have to pick one or create your own. It just doesn't work.
It's just a throwaway for me. I'm glad I'm not alone though, because I've had this
welcome to Team No Background.
Yeah, no background at all. I don't need it, and it never comes up. My DM's never like, oh, what background did you take? Oh, okay, perfect. This is a perfect situation for this.
Yeah. I rarely look. So I'll be honest, I was completely thrilled that you picked or was assigned. I don't know how character selection in this particular circumstance was done, but I'm so happy you were selected or you picked Alice for Justin's public domains campaign.
Yeah.
And by the way, for those who don't know, Justin, aka So You Want to Be a DM, go look them up.
Amazing. We love
absolutely.
them.
They are amazing. My question to you is, if Alice was not available and you had to pick something else, did you have a second pick in mind?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we actually talked about this on the So You Want to Be a Dungeon Master podcast. They have a little Patreon exclusive table talk after show called Action Surge, and that was a question that Justin had posed to us on one of those. And I had originally been kind of playing around with the idea of King Kong. And I was like, Fighter Barbarian would be fun, you know, but it was just like, when I thought about it, like the role playing would have been so hard. Just like this big dumb ape that's like huge, you know, there's not a lot of role play opportunity. And I just was kind of like stuck thinking about characters. I didn't really want to do like a superhero, like action-y type of person. You know, we had someone play Zorro. Daniel the DM was Zorro, which was super cool. But I was like, that's not really the flavor I'm going for. And I had originally kind of wanted to try to play cleric because I've still never played a cleric before. And every time I get an opportunity to make a character, I'm like, I should play a cleric. And for some reason, I connected cleric to Alice. And I was like, that'd be a cool build, you know, like some kind of like spiritual magic, and like she can like, you know, heal people, like maybe with like her potions or something. Yeah. But I actually ended up doing bard, and I chose the like critical role subclass, the
the sorrow.
School of. Is that what it's called? Tragedy. School of Tragedy.
That's right.
College of Tragedy. So, excuse me. Which Daniel recommended as like an option. And when I looked into it, I was like, oh, this is sick. Like goth poetry, I'm in. So that's how I got to that. And I'm really happy I did in the end because I think it was a really fun character to play.
Did you ever play, that fits so well with like, you ever played the American McGee Alice games?
Yes, and that was my inspiration for that Alice. And I told Justin that I like sent them a bunch of pictures of like, this is what I think the Cheshire Cat looks like, and it's like that super skeleton, bony version from American McGee, you know? That plus Tim Burton was the vibe that we went for.
I love it.
Yeah.
I was so interested. I was like, if there was a second option, and I'm not sure if it was discussed or if it even came to mind, if you could have played like maybe like gender bent male characters. I was looking at my own when I was thinking of this question. I was like, how many, you know, public domain characters are there that kind of fit this category? And I was
there's
like,
a lot.
There's a lot, but you know, it'd be interesting to see like a Robin Hood or a Dracula or.
Well, actually, Justin did do Robin Hood in their game, and they had Robin Hood be a drag queen, and her band of merry men were actually all drag kings.
That's awesome.
It was incredible.
That's so cool.
And they had the idea like forever ago, and so they were like, this is the perfect time to put it in. And I mean, Robin Hood was like super hot, and like Pooh ended up like hooking up with her. It was so great.
Only a line that D&D can give. Now I have one last question for you before we call this a finish with our table here. But what's harder? And I know you're a forever player, so I think this is sort of a question for you in terms of to present yourself or how to conclude. Is it harder to start the game as a player, or to end the game? You know, to sort of have this satisfying conclusion.
Well, I think we all know the trauma of not knowing if your game is ever going to have an ending.
It's true.
That kind of like looming presence that all
Life.
TTRPG has placed. Will I actually get to finish this game? Will this character actually have a conclusion? I find an ending really satisfying. Like being able to see a character to the conclusion and like having accomplished what you knew that you were going to accomplish in the game. I find that immensely satisfying. Especially if you know that you're going to have an ending and you know how long to expect the game to go. So that way you can kind of like get there, especially in a role-playing sense, when you are like role-playing with your other players and you guys are kind of like building your characters together during the game, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I didn't realize that my character knew that or like was into that or could do this thing, and you just kind of built that over the whole journey, whether that's 4 sessions or a year's worth of sessions or whatever. And you can kind of look back and reflect on where they came from in the beginning. Because I don't know about you, but I've had some wild character changes throughout games from the beginning to the end, where you're like, who is this person on the end that I am now stuck with?
Oh man, I played in a game that lasted 8 years.
Whoa,
and
that's awesome.
And it concluded.
What level did you get to?
Oh, 20.
Wow. Sick.
And I was... the moment we ended the game, like, even still, I don't feel satisfied. And I agree with you on the end of, like, what's harder, which is, I think, is, you're right, the satisfying ending. Because now you're, like, either the character died during the game, or the game dropped off. But even if you were able to make it to that end, it's also a little hard to let go.
Yeah.
You know, and you're like,
it is.
I still don't want there to be a conclusion for their story because maybe they'll come back. And that's sort of always in the mindset of a TTRPG player. It's like, they may show up again.
Yeah. I recycle my characters. I don't know about you, but if I built a character that I only got to play for a one-shot or for a failed Curse of Strahd run-through, let's say, then if I haven't played it in a couple years and I get the opportunity to bring them back, I just rebuild them. Like, I did that recently in my home game. I had a Curse of Strahd character that was an Arcane barbarian, and my friend is running now a home game for us that's all like very dragon heavy in the lore. And I'm like, sick, Arcane barbarian, let's go. And I just rebuilt him and just re-leveled him up to the level that we're at now. And it's great. It's great to have that same character in my pocket, but to kind of like give him a new adventure.
Is it hard for you to create voices for your character, if you do voices?
Oh my god. Keisha and I have a whole episode about this because she obviously, as a DM, is pretty good at voices. And it's one of those things where I feel like new TTRPG players get saddled with, where they think, the Matt Mercer effect, you always hear that, right?
Yeah.
Like, I have to do a voice, I have to be unique and like have these quirks and stuff. And the answer is no, I've never been good at doing voices. I have done them more and more lately, especially as I got into more like live play TTRPGs, especially like help kind of like give a better performance and make characters more distinct. But Keisha makes fun of me all the time because I'm like, oh, I'm gonna do a voice, and then I slip into an accent for like 1 second, and then you never hear it again. So I'm working on it. It's very stressful though, I will say.
In the DM's chair, that is a constant thing with NPCs. I'll say that much, is that you think of a accent for a character, and then they come back 20 sessions later, and you're like,
what was their voice? Yeah,
I don't know.
No
A British. They had a British voice, something along that lines. I don't know.
Exactly. Yeah, it's very hard, but I've been working on a little bit more. Actually, some of the best advice I've heard that I've kind of heard consistently, you might have heard some of this too, and Justin from So You Want to Be a DM has mentioned this, but picking like a word or a phrase that triggers the accent. So if you're like, I want my character to have an Australian accent, and you're like, hello, mate. And then that's like the triggering phrase, but you write that down. You're like, this character, this accent, this is the phrase, so that every time you can just kind of like slip into it a lot easier. Or just like, it is based on this character. Like, I've been trying to do a ridiculous accent in my home game, and it's just based on Laszlo from What We Do in the Shadows.
Oh
so
my
I'm just
god,
like,
that is awesome.
Okay, that's it. You know, and then I can kind of slip into it. Easier said than done, but I just thought that was really good advice. So,
I've been lucky where I have a little human. She saw pass by.
I did, yeah.
With Mama. But read him a lot of books, and because, DM brain goes, every character has to have a different voice.
Oh, that's helpful. Yeah.
It's very helpful. I was a guest player on this channel called Roll for Impact. And I chose this accent that I have no clue what it could be considered. It was just an accent I gave when I was reading a book about sharks. You're 100% right. That is something that anyone who else is trying to get into voice acting, you have to have such good advice. Just have that one word that you can say over and over again.
A trigger, yeah.
And I have to, like, it's a particular shark, and if I say that, it triggers, and I'm like, okay, now I know how to do it.
Yeah, totally. I mean, obviously, there's like so much more advice about like voice acting and stuff that I personally would like to see, but also that I've heard that we're not going to get into now. But yeah, it's just always been something that I like wish I could do more, and I know I just need to practice, but it's just. I actually just forget. I'm like, oh, I should do it in my car. And then I'm in my car and I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't do that. So.
I have one last question, and this is a question I usually ask everyone.
Okay.
And that is, you are sitting down, ready to get your content recorded. Before you hit that record button, do you still feel nervous? Is it still sort of this high energy, this tension before you hit record?
It depends. If I'm making a TikTok video, sometimes, yes. Depending on the content. Depending on, like, how jazzed up I am about the content, When I sit down to record with Keisha, no. Because it's just us. Our whole vibe is just being chaotic and goofy and silly, and we're only loosely structured, like, we have a topic in mind, but we don't really, like, format the episodes that much. And so it's kind of just fun to just like let it flow and just like talk. And we're friends. We've been friends for so long, and I think we're fucking hilarious. So when I'm listening to episodes again, I'm like cracking up, and like when we're in the moment, it's so fun and funny. But live plays, yes. Recording on other people's shows, yes. And recording TikTok content sometimes.
Well, that speaks mountains about how well you feel comfortable with your co-host. That's great.
She's great.
Nervous, at least for me, energy is always constant, and it's
so
good.
Weird.
No, please.
Oh, I was just gonna say, it's just so weird, like reflecting on being a content creator and like having to learn to listen to and rewatch yourself and stuff. And like sometimes you watch the same video like 4 times when you're editing, and you're just like, oh my god. So I've gotten past the threshold of like I fucking hate everything about this, and now I can just watch myself like passively, like almost like a third person style. But getting through that initially as a new content creator was like hell.
Oh my god, yes.
I mean, you probably know, right? Like editing your own videos and stuff. So awkward.
I began doing some content creation like on own channels, and it was live stream, so I never really rewatched it. I was like, all right, one and done. And then the first time I actually had to edit my own content, I did it for voiceover work for tech product reviews for a company. And they would hand me the file, and they're like, okay, yeah, here, you used our equipment, you used our recording tech, now go ahead and edit because you know how to edit. And having to hear your voice 90 times, it is the word. And you start to pick up like, oh, I have this weird sound in my throat whenever I say a particular word, or oh, I'm breathing weird. It's like when you're walking with friends, and if someone ever to make a comment like, hey, you walk funny.
Yeah,
it's
you
like,
would never forget it. Yeah.
Like, how do I present myself now? I feel really stiff.
Yeah. I do think it can be a little damaging to people, because then they could get, like some dysphoria from it and all that. So I'm lucky I didn't have to deal with anything too serious. And I did get over it pretty quickly. I think you just get used to it. You get used to hearing how your voice sounds in a recording and what you look like in a video. And then you kind of just like can take it as it is, and hopefully get through the editing process.
Well, that's a great rule for everyone here, is that I think it by our own experience, that if you're having trouble making content, especially when it comes to editing, don't worry, it'll get easier sooner or later. It'll get better. But I want to thank you so much for joining me here in Above Table.
Thank
Kayla,
you.
So I want to give you once again the floor again. Tell people where they can find you and what kind of content you make.
Yeah, thanks again for having me, by the way. This was really fun. Like I said originally before we recorded, I like getting the chance to be in the hot seat instead of being the interviewer a lot of the time. So it can be really fun just answering questions and talking to other people in the space. You can find the Potions and Potpourri podcast really wherever you get your podcast. Pretty easy, Potions and Potpourri. We're on most of the social medias. Find us while you can on TikTok. We do different content across all of the platforms, so you can get a little bit of like different things depending on where you find us. You can also reach out to us. We got a Gmail account, potionsandpotpourri@gmail.com, if you want to hit us up about making some content or collab. And me, typically, you can find on TTRPG shows. Right now, I just finished running another series with So You Want to Be a Dungeon Master called 99 Mall Madness.
I was checking out that out too.
Also, the aforementioned public domains. So, yeah, usually you can find all of that content with the Potions Potpourri stuff.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. I'll check you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.